Back in studio with the guys, Joe Musso alongside Bryant, McFadden, and Christian Fauria. Fellas, here we are. All season long, waiting for this very moment, and we get two teams that we've seen quite recently going for, like you like to say it, Mac, that sticky Lombardi. When you look at this matchup, we'll get into some of the head-to-heads, but what is the first thing that jumps off the marquee at you?
Steve Spagnuolo and his game plan to slow down, neutralize Saquon Barkley. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that, especially in meaningful football like we've watched throughout the playoffs. Saquon Barkley has been unstoppable, and it's safe to say their offense, it runs through number 26, and he opened other areas in their offense with his production. So what game plan, Christian, will the mastermind in Steve Spagnuolo has? One thing we do know, he will have a specific game plan for Saquon Barkley. And we saw some of those things surface in tonight's matchup against Josh Allen. Blitzes that we didn't watch the first 3 quarters, but he unleashed in the 4th quarter. So what is the game plan to slow down Saquon Barkley? Because if you can slow down Saquon Barkley, one would think you will have success against the entire offense. But if you allow Saquon Barkley to not just control the game, but the splash plays that he delivers. I mean, he's like Chef Curry on the football field. He relies on the big plays, the 3-pointers. He's not a layup guy. He's not a dunk guy. He looks for extra points that actually adds momentum to what they're doing along with energy.
See, if you're watching this that last game against the Eagles, and you can tell that Jalen Hurts, he can make you pay. If you try to blitz him and if you try to challenge him, like we saw that he hit that 4th and 5 to A.J. Brown, and he made a bunch of other crucial throws, and his receivers came up with big catches. So that can be a little intimidating. But ultimately, the number one priority, the number one priority is stopping Saquon. And I would just start with the basics. Can we all just get in the right gap? Can we take the right angle? Hey, when he breaks free, can you at least maybe try to slow him down? Unlike the Commanders did when they felt like either they just wanted to turn it down or had really no ability to even wrap him up at all. Like that to me.
First play from scrimmage.
The very first play, just that alone. I mean, it's going to go back to basics, in my opinion. Just stay in your gaps. You know, don't get fooled by all the eye candy in the backfield, and just, and if he runs you over, big deal. Who cares?
Clear the question that Eagles offense asks to opposing defense. Can you stop this guy? What is the question that the Chiefs offense is going to ask this Eagles defense? They've sort of molded and been water, for lack of a better term, sort of filled in the soft spots of other teams. What do they ask of the Eagles on Super Bowl Sunday?
Well, it starts with their front. Jalen Carter has been unblockable. He is a grown man, and he has embraced the moment to be their lead singer for their front, and everyone else follows his footsteps. So that is the question I'm asking when you look at Philly versus Pat Mahomes and their offense. Dominating at the line of scrimmage. If you look at the last time that we watched Pat Mahomes lose a Super Bowl, that happened against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if you remember that game, he was running for his life. Now, granted, there were some injuries on the offensive line that played to a lot of the success Tampa had against them, but they harassed him. He never became the Pat Mahomes because he was uncomfortable in the pocket, and he never was able to go through his progressions correctly to be able to hit the open pass catcher. So for Philly, you have to be able to dominate at the point of attack in the trenches and force Pat Mahomes to play the game uncomfortable.
And I think the advantage that the Eagles defense will have is they have the ability to get after the quarterback by only rushing 4 guys. They can devote more resources to the back end. They can play zone on one side, a man on the other. They can bracket Kelsey. I feel like they can get more creative. That Vic Fangio defense, I feel like they, I guess, would have the high ground when it comes to their ability to scheme them up and to make things difficult. Because the one thing that you know about Patrick Mahomes, when you force him to just kind of stay in that pocket, like a lot of scrambling quarterbacks that like to, improvise and keep plays alive, this is the key for him.
And the thing I love as a fan watching Andy Reid and his prep for certain games, you don't know what game plan you're going to see. Like tonight's matchup, remember how they started the game against Buffalo? A lot of RPO play action with quick rhythm throws. We haven't really seen that, especially the most recent game.
They became the Ravens for a second.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, what are they doing? But so you don't know exactly what game plan to get. And I'm going to tell you, a team that used to do this to us a lot when I played was the New England Patriots. Like when you thought you knew the game plan, you didn't. They would show you something they haven't ran in 3 or 4 years. You got to go back in the arsenal to try to do as much film study to try try to get a lead on what you might see. So for Andy Reid and for Vic Fangio, who really have a mutual respect for each other, Vic has to go into the arsenal to kind of go back.
Yeah.
Look at the every matchup against Philly, watch it.
Well,
go back to the previous Super Bowl matchup as well, watch it to kind of get a lead.
And that was where I was going next here. What do you learn from 57 when you're turning on all the tape and you come around to that one? They were in a positive game script for quite some time in that Super Bowl. The Eagles felt like they might have had it right there in front of them. What do you take away from that past failure? There's roster turnover, but the scheme is the scheme, to your point.
I think in terms of confidence, they should walk into this game highly confident because their secondary is better now than what they were during that Super Bowl matchup. If you go back to that Super Bowl matchup, Pat Mahomes had success throwing the football. His playmakers were making plays outside, and he was never under duress. When you look at Philadelphia, to your point, Christian, that was a cool point. They can play man-to-man, right? They're not afraid of the pass catchers from Kansas City.
Yeah.
They can rush only 4 and drop extra guys into the throwing windows for Pat Mahomes. That's a nice luxury to have because now you minimize the throwing windows and you make things extremely tight for a guy like Pat Mahomes. When you look at Buffalo, they had issues, especially when Benford went down with that injury in terms of playing man-to-man in the back end, so we saw a lot of generic zones. For Vic Fangio, especially when he wanted to get exotic and be a little more aggressive, Quinyon Mitchell can lock up. Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean, those are 3 legit CB1s in the secondary that can play man-to-man, and they're not a liability.
Yeah, they got the personnel.
Yeah.
So, and I think, going back to, old Super Bowls and old games from 2 years ago, I don't know if you really get anything other than the general philosophy on how to handle explosive, game-changing offenses with real dynamic players and an offensive coordinator that is very creative and very aggressive. And I'm getting flashbacks when you talk about the Patriots. I remember going through 2 years, back-to-back Super Bowls, and every week there was something else. And sure enough, we end up going to the Super Bowl playing against, the Philadelphia Eagles. I go on Monday to open up my playbook, the game plan book, and we're not even involved. We spent the whole year going 12 personnel, running the football. Sure enough, against the Eagles, they decided to spread it out. Yep. And nobody knew what was going on. So the Chiefs have that ability.
That's a chess match.
But for the Eagles, it's pretty simple. It's a real simple, predictable game plan. They're going to beat you up physically, and their big wide receivers and fast wide receivers are going to try and catch you when you're sleeping.
Last thing, the Eagles' big 3 offensively, they have to be big 3, the playmakers. Saquon, AJ, and Jalen Hurts. Those 3 guys, they have to play outstanding.
They showed up on Championship Sunday. They'll have to show up for one more. Taking a look at what our friends in the desert believe it will be. Kansas City laying the same number they did in the AFC title game, 1.5 total, coming in at 49.5. Way too early. Plenty of time to vacillate one side to the other. Plenty of time for this number to move on whale money. What do you like at 1.5?
Kansas City.
How about those
Chiefs?
Really? I am all in on the Eagles.
Well, you were just all in on Buffalo. You just gonna keep trying until you get it right.
I know, but it's and I don't have Kansas City Chiefs fatigue, by the way. But we just sat there and made a case for the Eagles.
In the matchup.
We just made a case for the Eagles.
They just find a way to win all the time.
I know. It's hard to kind of ignore that. I get it.
I will say this, Mac.
What?
We sat here.
Yes.
Thanksgiving weekend.
We did.
I told you who?
Chiefs.
I told you who? And I told you Philly over Kansas City, which pains me to say.
You're getting off the train.
I'm not getting off the train. This is what I told you on Thanksgiving.
He wants to take a victory.
Yeah, he's getting off the train. Listen, I will not hit the snooze button on Pat Mahomes. Shots out the scissor, by the way, like some of you guys are doing. I'm going to keep rolling with them because I have yet to see anything else happen. So
I'm right there with you.
I'm taking Kansas City. And also, too, the logo colors.
I'm just hedging out of my Thanksgiving.
The logo colors played into play. You mentioned that.
Don't get Max started on
the logo colors.
It is.
You see the logo of the Super Bowl, right?
It is green. It is red.
And also, to the first meeting, it was a little bit of green, a little bit of red. We just saw in the highlights. You saw the patch on their jersey.
You go one layer deeper and you find me a winner. We got 2 weeks to do just that.
Told you.
Bryant McFadden.
Christian I can't wait to overanalyze it.
We will.
Thank you, fellas, as we get set for Super Bowl Sunday. February 9th coming your way from New Orleans. The Chiefs and the Eagles running it back.